In the past series of Behind the Eyes, we took a deep dive into the career of Matt Roney, a hospital optometrist whose journey is frankly, well, it's pretty extraordinary. Matt works on the umbrella of the hospital eye service, where he's built an incredibly varied and demanding career. Over the years, he's accumulated high qualifications, gained extensive hands-on surgical experience, and consistently pushed himself into more complex clinical roles. The breadth of his work is striking. This isn't narrow, repetitive optometry, it's layered, specialized, and constantly evolving. What really stands out is his relentless progression. Matt hasn't stood still for a second. He's now pursuing a PhD while continuing to work clinically, an example of someone utilizing pretty much every ounce of brain power available, learning non-stop and operating at an academic and clinical level that goes far beyond what most of us ever need to reach. It's impressive, genuinely it is, and in many ways it was inspiring, but it also raises an interesting contrast. With all that depth, all that specialization, and all that intellectual horsepower, would he cope with a 20-minute fully booked chaotic Saturday clinic? I'm not too sure. The phone's ringing, the waiting room overflowing, the refractions back to back, and zero time to think. It's not a criticism, more of a reminder how different corners of optometry demand very different skills. This episode highlights just how broad the profession really is and how success can look wildly different depending on where and how you practice. We also spoke with Priya, whose career began in the kind of high-volume, multiple-site optometry setting that most of us are very familiar with, before making the move into telemedicine. The background mattered. Working on pace across multiple settings builds essential skills, and Priya's experience highlights just how critical time management, resilience, and rapid clinical decision-making are in modern optometric practice. These aren't traits you develop overnight. They're forged in busy clinics with constant pressure. One thing that genuinely surprised me was the sheer number of patient interactions scheduled into the diary. It really brings home the intensity of the workload and the mental stamina required to sustain quality care throughout the day. We also explored the reality of remote clinical practice, and it's clear that using clinical skills at a distance is far from easy. Telemedicine demands practitioners who are not only clinically sound, but also technologically confident and exceptional communicators. Without that combination, remote care simply falls apart. With the NHS 10-year plan increasingly shifting care away from hospital settings and closer to the community, it's becoming a fact that remote care isn't a future concept, it's already here. What's also striking is how the clinical baseline has shifted. Skills such as red-eye differential diagnosis and OCT interpretation are no longer viewed as higher-level competencies. In this space, they're now considered fundamentals. That said, this type of role won't suit everyone. Some practitioners thrive in team-based bricks-and-mortar practice, valuing face-to-face collaboration and the rhythm of a physically clinical environment. It's definitely part of now, not just the future. But then we were then joined by Sarah Hardy, an independent service provider optometrist whose career progression highlights a slightly different but equally compelling route within the profession. Sarah clearly worked her way up by leveraging employer-supported high qualifications, particularly in the highly relevant and in-demand area of glaucoma monitoring. It's a strong example of how structured progression within ISP setting can open doors to advanced clinical roles, and there's no doubt that those additional qualifications have played a central part in her development. What perhaps we didn't fully explore in the podcast, and something worth reflecting on now, is how the cultural differences between ISP and the NHS, and if there is one, or is the overlap greater than we actually assume. On paper, the clinical objective may look the same, but the environment's pressures, underlying drivers can feel very different. And that leads to a bigger question: how transferable is this skill set really? As a locum, I can move from one practice to another with relative ease. The equipment might change, the workflow might differ, but an eye exam's still an eye exam. Does this hold true when moving from an ISP to an NHS setting? Honestly, I'm not entirely sure, and it's not entirely clear. The use of robotic slit lamps is a good example of where these differences may surface. For me, it highlights how ISP models are designed to see higher volumes of patients more efficiently. The level of investment required for large diagnostic centres demands throughput, and the technology reflects that business reality. And yet, despite those constraints, one thing isn't up for debate. High qualifications matter. They very clearly helped with her progress, expand her clinical role, and operate at a higher level, regardless of the setting. This episode was less about drawing conclusions and more about asking the right questions about how different parts of optometry work overlap and diverge, and what that means for us navigating our own career paths. Then we have Charlotte, whose career has taken her through a wide variety of optometric settings before she eventually settled into a domiciliary role. Domiciliary optometry is often misunderstood, and Charlotte's experience helps cut through some of those assumptions. The travel, the challenging patient demographics, and the sheer physicality of the role means this line of work definitely isn't for everyone. It requires adaptability, stamina, and a high level of clinical confidence, often working solo without the immediate support of a team. And let's be honest, when most people think domiciliary, paediatrics isn't the first thing that comes to mind, yet for Charlotte, paediatric work was a completely normal part of the working day. It's a reminder just how broad and unpredictable domiciliary practice can be. As with many roles we've discussed on this podcast, it won't appeal to everyone. Some practitioners thrive in team-based bricks and mortar practice, where collaboration and routine work are central. Domiciliary work demands a different mindset, one built around independence and problem-solving on the move. There are, however, some clear attractions. Salaries appear higher, and the technology is increasingly fit for purpose, with portable handheld equipment becoming more capable by the year. It does make you wonder, how long will it be before we're using a handheld OCT in the field? Looking ahead, the bigger picture matters. The NHS 10-year plan is clear in its intention to again bring care closer into the home, and domiciliary fits really well into that vision. Add to that growing number of joint venture partnership opportunities emerging in this market space, and it's clear this is a growth sector with market share very much still up for grabs. This episode asks a simple but important question. Is domiciliary the future, or just one of the several futures, and where do you see yourself within it? Will it be the only service you provide, or will your practice offer this as part of your combined remote home and practice offering? Where does this all leave the locum? Well, we spoke to Punkage, and he gave us what can only be described as a root and branches view of locum life, a perspective that covers pretty much every base. Having worked on both sides of the fence, that breadth of experience seems to have made him more adaptable, more alert, and arguably more resilient than most. We explored what actually drove him to make the leap into locuming, what prompted the decision, what was that first week really like, and how does it compare to residency, where structure, familiarity, and support are more predictable. On paper, the pros are obvious. Choosing your days, taking holidays when you want, flexibility, variety, and autonomy. You can pick and choose, opt in or out, and avoid being tied to one place or one way of working. But the trade-offs matter. There's no sick pay, no maternity or paternity leave, no paid holidays, no pension, and travel quickly becomes part of the job. Breaks aren't guaranteed. Some weeks you're in demand, other weeks you're suddenly not needed at all. We talk honestly about how long it takes to build regular days and what that uncertainty feels like early on. The variety can be stimulating, different practices, different equipment, even different dry eye jobs, but it also keeps you in a constant state of alert. Are you expected to get in first? Are your replacements next week? And yet, a test is still a test. Or is it? Is clinical care truly transferable regardless of setting? How much do apps and digital booking platforms change the game? Does locuming turn you into a bit of a firefighter? And if so, do further qualifications really matter in the same way? I don't think we've got the answers, but career-wise, we explore whether locuming can feel restrictive, particularly if your ambitions lean towards refractive, domiciliary, leadership, or strategic roles. Does the lack of continuity limit experience, or does it sharpen clinical agility and rhythm? There's also the human side. Store politics, maintaining personal and professional relationships, and the challenge of staying up to date with evolving areas like myopia management or dry eye therapies and eye care pathways. Is it about a system, a notebook, wearing the right stuff, or putting your director hat on when needed? Finally, we reflect on timing. Would Punkies do it sooner? How long should someone wait after qualifying? And what advice would he give to residents seriously considering locuming? The episode closes with practical wisdom. Take breaks 21 days straight isn't sustainable. Invest in relationships and be intentional about why you're choosing this path. 3 tips. No sugarcoating, just a realistic look at locum life. The freedom, its fragility, and the place in modern optometry. Loads to think about. Loads from me. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Big thanks to all the guests so far. Plenty more to come. Trust me, we're only getting started. Like, subscribe, spread the word about Behind the Eyes. And thanks for getting engaged in it. And I'll see you all soon.